Platformers are a subgenre of video games where the main objective is to go through areas with unstable terrain, suspended platforms of different height, and more. Sometimes platforming is combined with other game genres, but platformer games rely heavily on movement, such as jumping, climbing, and other related maneuvers. There are so many games that are platformers, and there are many games that take platforming elements and integrate them into their overall gameplay style. But for today's video, I'll be talking about 10 of the best games that include platforming that are definitely worth a play. Hollow Knight is one of the best platforming metroidvania games out there, and the story of Hollow Knight lets you play as the Knight, a bug that goes through the world of Hollow Nest, exploring its secrets, fighting against difficult opponents, and uncovering what turned Hollow Nest so grim and dark. The game is critically acclaimed and has been hailed as one of the best video games ever. Hollow Knight features hand-drawn art, a great soundtrack, and great combat that really helps it stand out. Additionally, the map is vast and requires a decent amount of exploration to go through, with plenty of platforming. Most of the maps are designed around platforming mechanics, and the platforming is essential, as one wrong jump or move could land you in trouble. The combat in Hollow Knight may start out basic, but as you play you can unlock different abilities and upgrades, giving you more style in your combat and some flexibility depending on your own preferences. Hollow Knight is 100% one of the most impressive video games I've ever played. Celeste is one of the harder games on this list and definitely can feel a little frustrating until you get the hang of it, but its platforming is really fun and it's one of the most pure platforming games on this list. Celeste starts out pretty straightforward, but almost right away you're thrust into challenging levels that get more challenging as you go throughout the game. Celeste requires lots of timing for jumps and is definitely a game that you have to focus on when you play it to see where you're going and how to conquer certain areas. But for those of you who enjoy heavier emphasis on platforming rather than combat, Celeste is definitely a game for you. Celeste's story is about a young woman named Madeline who wants to climb Mount Celeste in order to conquer her anxiety and fears. And it's a really interesting symbolic portrayal of the struggle of mental health with a challenging but fun gameplay style. One of my favorite Metroidvania games ever made, Dead Cells is a game that I've been obsessed with ever since I started playing it. And it's also got some amazing platforming mixed with its high action, bright visuals, and fantastic gameplay. Dead Cells is a roguelike as well, meaning that when you die, you go back to the beginning of the maps and will have to rerun whatever you ran before. It's punishing and can definitely feel difficult, but once you click with this game, it's an amazing time with tons of potential for hours and hours of replayability. In fact, it's one of the most replayable games I have ever played. Dead Cells includes lots of cool weapons, magic, and very interesting lore as well, and it's something that you can uncover as you go throughout the game. Although there's not much speaking in Dead Cells, you still get plenty of story by exploring the world. Dead Cells also has some fast-paced platforming with enemies at nearly every turn. It's a really high-stakes game, but it's so worth playing, and I 100% recommend that everyone give Dead Cells a try. Super Meat Boy is one of the most notoriously difficult platformers out there, but it's also one of the most fun, pure platformers that you can play. The game's style requires you to have split-second timing with jumps and movements, and it also features fine controls. You have nearly 300 obstacle-filled levels where you need to be non-stop paying attention to make sure that you can actually succeed. Super Meat Boy also features several Dark World levels, which are the hardest parts of the game and really challenge your skills with it. In the game, you control Meat Boy as he works towards rescuing his girlfriend Bandage Girl from Dr. Fetus. Super Meat Boy is a must-play for those who want a really intense, pure platforming experience with a challenge that is absolutely rewarding to compete and may not necessarily care about more elements like in Metroidvanias or combat necessarily as well. Ori and the Blind Forest is one of the more visually brilliant games on this list and tells the story of a guardian spirit named Ori who travels through a mystical forest called Nibel. Ori and the Blind Forest is an absolutely beautiful game with hand-painted visuals, and it also includes great platforming and Metroidvania elements that require you to explore and solve puzzles as well as unlock new abilities to make the gameplay more varied and interesting. The story is a really good one and has a lot of interesting themes like loss, love, and redemption. I also honestly think that if you enjoyed games like Dead Cells, then you'll also love Ori and the Blind Forest. It's a very beautiful Metroidvania and an excellent platformer that's totally worth trying out. Rayman Legends is definitely one of Ubisoft's most iconic games and is a fun, energetic, and visually vibrant platformer that follows the adventures of Rayman, Globox, and the Teen Seas as you traverse the different worlds to help them rescue their friends. Rayman Legends is an amazing platformer that has some great controls, amazing levels of platforming fun, plenty of enemies, and some creative obstacles obstacles for sure. The art style and soundtrack are also really fun, and the game is an overall great experience. Rayman Legends features great level design, with each new world introducing new things to the overall gameplay. This is great because it doesn't get boring after some time, and you can enjoy a varied amount of gameplay styles. I definitely think that if you want a platformer that's rewarding, fun, and unique, as well as a little whimsical, then Rayman Legends is definitely the game you're looking for. Blasphemous is another fantastic platformer and metroidvania, as well as a bit of a Souls-like that includes a really unique visual spin with tons of influence from Catholic-era Spain. The lore of Blasphemous is also really intense and pretty wild, and it's got a lot of religious influences. You play as the penitent one who must go through a pilgrimage and face off against crazy bosses and enemies as he goes on this perilous journey. Blasphemous is very similar gameplay-wise to Hollow Knight and somewhat has a similar feel to Dead Cells. However, it differentiates itself in that the combat is different and the upgrades you get enhance your fighting style differently than the other games I just mentioned. However, if you find yourself enjoying Hollow Knight and Dead Cells, then you'll also probably enjoy Blasphemous. Blasphemous's platforming is well integrated, though not the best platforming, but still, integrated with its combat and Metroidvania influences, it's a really fun game. Your exploration of the world is different depending on which paths you decide to take first, so it has a lot of replayability value. You also have a lot of enemies to contend with at every turn, and it's honestly a really fun game and has a dark art style, which is definitely one of the more unique ones on this list. The Spyro Reignited Trilogy is an Activision published platformer and is a remastered collection of the first 3 Spyro games: Spyro the Dragon, Ripto's Rage, and Year of the Dragon. The classic platformers got some updates, of course, for things like graphics and audio as well as the controls, but either way you still play as Spyro, a purple dragon, through many uniquely designed worlds, rescuing other dragons, collecting gems, and fighting off different kinds of enemies. The gameplay mechanics are really neat and include things like gliding, breathing fire, and more. It's definitely a great take on the platformer genre with some really detailed worlds and designs. If you want a less Metroidvania focused platformer, then you definitely need to check out Spyro Reignited Trilogy. Crash Bandicoot has been one of the most popular game franchises out there and is one of the most recognizable Activision franchises, of course aside from Call of Duty, but still Crash Bandicoot's Insane Trilogy is the remastered collection of the original first 3 Crash Bandicoot games, including of course Crash Bandicoot, Cortex Strikes Back, and Warped. The remastered version includes updated graphics, better audio, and more, but still maintains the same charm that the original games had, with its excellent gameplay as you play as Crash Bandicoot. Much of the levels involve obstacles, fighting against fun bosses, and more as you attempt to stop Dr. Neo Cortex. Even if you've never played the original games, the remastered version is honestly a great way to enjoy the Crash Bandicoot series and their awesome platforming experiences, with some improvements of course to things like the quality of life and more. If you want a great platformer, check out Crash Bandicoot's Insane Trilogy for sure. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is a collection of amazing platformer titles that take a lot of influence from the days when we had 8-bit gaming. The collection includes the following titles: Shovel Knight Shovel of Hope, Plague of Shadows, Spectre of Torment, and King of Cards. You get to play as Shovel Knight and you wield a shovel blade as you embark on a quest to defeat the Enchantress and save Shovel Knight's beloved Shield Knight. Shovel Knight features responsive controls, great level design, and some challenging but rewarding gameplay all the same, as well as its fantastic pixel art, which is something that I always love to see in video games. Shovel Knight takes a lot of elements from the classic platformer style of games, but has modern design infused into it as well, which is great for fans of both old and new styles of platformer titles. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is definitely a great collection of games that are totally worth giving a go if you enjoy more platforming and maybe don't want a Metroidvania experience as well. I know a lot of the platformer games on this list also happen to be Metroidvanias, and even we had one roguelike, so if those games weren't your style, then maybe Shovel Knight will be. And with that being said, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all so you never miss out on a single upload. Comment below which of these games you're interested in trying, and if you've played them, which was your favorite. Don't forget to check out our website for gaming news, guides, and more. The link to that as well as all our other important links are in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next one.